Bienvenidos de nuevo a nuestro círculo de reflexión, yin yang de almas y mente.
It's a pleasure to have you here. As you know, we are an extension of the Rober Colors universe, exploring together the paths of philosophy, psychology, and spirituality.
And although this is our space of calm, we always remember our encounters with other friends from Rober's main channel. Today, we want to revisit Alan Watts' teachings to delve into a question that has puzzled sages and seekers for ages. Who are we really? Beyond our name, beyond our history, what is this self that we feel we are?
It's a fascinating question. Watts, with his particular insight, invites us to question the idea of a continuous and static self traveling through time. He suggests that our experience of time as a river flowing linearly, carrying with it an unchanging self, might be a very persistent illusion.
From a psychological perspective, we observe how the mind constantly weaves a narrative to make sense of our existence. We create a coherent story about who we were, who we are, and who we will be. Memory plays a crucial role in this, selecting and connecting fragments of experience to build that sense of continuity of the self.
It's like watching a bonfire at night. If you take an ember and spin it quickly, you see a circle of fire. But does a circle really exist? Or is it just a point of light moving so fast that our eyes perceive it as a continuous form? Watts used this analogy for the self.
Exactly. Or the example he himself gives, quoting Thomas Stearns Eliot, the person who settles into the train to read the newspaper is not the same one who boarded the train from a platform. And, by extension, those who are listening to us now are not exactly the same as they were a few minutes ago, nor the same as they will be when this video ends. Each moment is, in a sense, a new existence.
This concept can be disconcerting at first because we are very attached to our identity, to that feeling of being a separate and constant entity. The self gives us a sense of security, of control. But Watts, and many wisdom traditions, suggest that much of our suffering comes precisely from clinging to that idea of a fixed self, when reality is an incessant flow of change.
In Buddhism, there's the concept of Anatta, often translated as non-self or insubstantiality. It doesn't deny experience, but rather the existence of a permanent and independent entity that has those experiences. They say, suffering exists, but there is no one who suffers. Actions exist, but there are no doers. The path exists, but there is no one who follows it. And nirvana exists, but there is no one who reaches it. It's a poetic way of pointing to this same idea.
Which leads us to a liberating, albeit radical perspective. If there is no fixed self that drags the burdens of the past or anxiously fears the future, what remains? What remains is present experience, the now in its constant manifestation. Problems, then, are not my problems, but simply problems that arise and dissolve in the flow of existence.
This has profound implications for how we handle our emotions and thoughts. If I understand that my thoughts and emotions are also transitory phenomena that occur in consciousness, rather than being the essence of who I am, I can observe them with more detachment, without completely identifying with them. It reduces the burden of having to constantly defend or justify that self.
Nature itself is a mirror of this truth. The river is never the same river, though we call it by the same name. Clouds form and dissipate. Seasons change. Everything is a dance of transformation. Trying to stop that flow, or pretending that we are an immutable rock in the middle of the current, is to go against the very nature of reality.
Watts pushes us to see that this continuity is a construction. Like ripples in a pond, it seems the water moves outward, but in reality, the water only moves up and down. What moves is the wave, the disturbance. Our feeling of moving through time, dragging a constant self, could be similar.
And liberation doesn't come from destroying the ego or the self, but from understanding its illusory and functional nature. The self is a useful tool for navigating the everyday world, for relating to others. The problem arises when we merge with it, when we believe we are that tool, and not the consciousness that uses it.
So, the question, who am I, perhaps doesn't have a fixed answer, but points to a greater mystery. The very consciousness that experiences this constant flow. Being present in that flow, without clinging, is where true freedom resides.
An idea to reflect on. If you are not the self you believe yourself to be, what possibilities open up? Thank you for joining us in this exploration.
Observe your thoughts about who you are this week. Are they fixed, or do they change? We wish you much peace in that discovery.
May the river of life carry you with gentleness and awareness. Until our next encounter.